So
All right, thank you everyone for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Potts Forbes. I am a CERT coordinator from LA City. Can everybody hear me? I know there's people in the back who are talking. Can the people sitting in the back hear me? No, okay. Is there a microphone system in here? All right, well, if you can't hear me, they can move forward and I will try and project. As I said, my name is Patrick Potts Forbes. I have been in CERT for, I have a slide on this. I've been doing CERT for over 10 years. And many of those years I've been a CERT coordinator with LA City. I started as a Battalion 2 coordinator. After COVID started, I became the Central Bureau coordinator. And one of the things we've been trying to do is build teams. For those of you who are talking in the back, if you could take this maybe outside, appreciate it. One of the impacts that we had during COVID was that the city of Los Angeles said all volunteer programs were on hold. For those of you who do CERT, you know that that is not a good thing. And all of you should be CERT graduates, I'm assuming. So what we did is we figured out, we pivoted, we took everything online. When I went to my first CERT conference, somebody said, "Oh, you're the guy on YouTube." I'm like, "You what?" No, we're currently streaming live on YouTube right now. So I didn't realize that people from around the country were actually watching me on YouTube from the recordings that we were doing. But we've been doing monthly presentations on Zoom and then live stream to YouTube since COVID started. And I would dare say it really helped save the program, keep things going until the restrictions were lifted and we could start doing in person again. During that time, we started really developing a format and template for how we could roll out CERT at a turnkey level within the city of Los Angeles. What I'm bringing to you today is the efforts that we've been doing in hopes that you'll find it interesting for your programs. Can I get a show of hands? How many people are just starting their program right now? Okay, you're all veterans. This is really designed for the new CERT graduate or the new team program leader who wants to say, how do I get started? For those of you who have existing programs, I hope that you can take some of this back and say, this is useful. But at the end, I'm going to ask you to bring some back to us. Say, hey, we've done customizations to the CERT program that you might find interesting so that we can share it with the rest of the country. I'm a volunteer. I paid my way here. I'm not getting paid. I'm not a firefighter. Our fire captain asked, why don't I join the fire department? I told him, all the training says don't run into the burning building. You guys run in the burning building. In my opinion, they're heroes. I have zero interest in running into the building that's about to collapse on top of me. I am an EMT. I do maintain my EMT certification, but it was more to actually get the training so that when I offer training to people, it's coming from some sort of source of credibility. I have not ridden in an ambulance other than the ride-alongs. I have no interest in working a minimum wage ambulance job. Full-time, I am a network and systems engineer for One Legacy. We do the organ and tissue donation for the LA region. And that's been my career path. Taking a lot of what I've learned troubleshooting computer systems, network systems, I've applied it to CERT. I start with what's not working and how can we fix it? How can we build a better mousetrap? How can we build a solution? And that's really what we've rolled into the neighborhood team program here. I'll talk about the foundation I'm the executive director of a little bit later. And let me ask you guys a question. Since you're all wearing CERT in some way, shape, or form, probably graduates, can somebody raise your hand and tell me what is CERT to you?
Neighbors helping neighbors.
Neighbors helping neighbors. That's great. You stole it from our tagline.
No. I need somewhere to real quick. I don't have a minute. So if I want to get their attention, I use that and it works.
I love it. It's perfect. It really is neighbors helping neighbors. Someone else, raise your hand.
As an emergency manager for the city, I tell them that for me, they're force multipliers.
CERT is force multipliers for the city personnel at all times or just during disasters?
When requested.
When requested,
But
okay.
predominantly, we're force multipliers for the fire department and city special events.
Yeah, and a lot of programs are doing that. We're doing that in LA City with their call-out team. Anyone else?
For people who are in the right place at the right time, willing to do the right thing.
I love that. Right place, right time, and willing to do the right thing. Someone else had one hand up over here? Yes. Absolutely. Doing the greatest good for the greatest number in the shortest amount of time. I like that you added that last part because usually they say greatest good for the greatest number, and then we do a drill and there's discussion. 10 minutes of discussion about the guy who's bleeding out because the guy who's bleeding out is not real and is dead. So the shortest amount of time is critical. So in my opinion, CERT trains community members to be able to respond safely in an emergency or a disaster happening in their immediate surroundings or neighborhood to save lives until the professionals can show up. Several of you covered those topics. One thing I want to emphasize though is CERT is basic training. CERT is standardized training through FEMA. And I hear this from our instructors. CERT is a toolkit. They teach you skills, basic first aid, triage, cribbing, fire suppression, how to search a building. These are key components of the training that you learn in the CERT basic. But one thing that they don't say is that CERT needs must be customized to your neighborhood. The FEMA CERT training is designed to be broad. It's designed to be generic. It's designed to be, I dare say, even vague at times. But you can add to the program. You can't take away from the training materials, but you can add to it. And that's what's intended. You are supposed to modify and customize CERT for the needs of your community or the people that you're teaching. And then CERT is linked to the government. You're supposed to get permission to teach. You're supposed to have a program manager that's been approved. There have been programs that are considered rogue and shut down by their state CERT program managers because they were not authorized to exist, for better or for worse. And there's certainly better points. There's reasons for that. FEMA, the state, the program managers, the government agencies want quality. They want to make sure they know who's teaching it. They want to make sure that they're teaching in the correct way. So these are all good things. However, I hear all the time, oh, CERT will do this. CERT's going to rescue us. CERT is going to do all these things. CERT is not an organization. If we go back, CERT is basic training. It's the training you learn in the class. There's no organization behind it unless an organization is behind it. And many of you have 501c3s that are behind your CERT people. That is your CERT organization. or if the government agency that's running the program is doing that kind of level. And some do a great job at it. Others are very much, this is training that we're gonna do. It's called train and release. We're gonna train our people and then let them loose and they have to figure it out. CERT does not set up infrastructure. When I would sit in on classes from our trainers, our firefighters, they would say, okay, you're gonna go to the CERT staging area, and look at me and say, where's the closest CERT staging area? And I'd be like, I'll get back to you on that, because we don't have any. The city doesn't set them up. The fire department doesn't set up these staging areas. It's a lot to set these up. And if you think that a large city can do this, has the resources to go to the micro level and set up staging areas within each community, that's a lot to ask. In smaller municipalities where you have maybe 100,000 people in your town, this is actually something that's very doable. And it has probably been done at that level. But the larger cities, that is a monumental task to ask them to be able to do. And finally, and this is the big thing, we don't learn what's next from CERT, from the CERT training. I take that back. Some programs may actually do that, especially the smaller municipalities. But when you have a large city like Los Angeles and they say, okay, we've taught you the skills, we taught you the toolbox, now you need to figure out what's next. That should be understood as a reality, because in our fire department, we have what, eight full-time instructors to teach 4 million people. The numbers don't work in our favor. Now, the neighborhood team program, I'm going to start in reverse, because there's been a lot of questions about what it is. This has been an ongoing issue. NTP is not something that you pay for. It's not something we're asking your volunteers to pay for. It's not a replacement for CERT. It's not a competition for CERT. And what we've said is, take what you want, take what you need, leave what you don't, and then if you can give back to the system. It's not an all or nothing. We want to give you examples of how things can possibly work if you're looking for those examples. And if you look through and say, well, that doesn't make sense for my neighborhood, cool, don't need to use it. The neighborhood team program system is the customizations we've done in LA City. About 10 years ago, City of Los Angeles is broken up into 4 bureaus and 14 battalions. About 10 years ago, every single battalion and bureau did something different. So you do a drill in the valley, you do a drill in coastal San Pedro, and the drills look nothing alike because everyone has done it differently. And that makes sense. Coming from the network engineer point of view, someone said, if I ask 10 engineers how to solve this problem, what are you going to get? 10 different solutions, because everyone has their own way of doing it. And that's perfectly fine. But my issue is when you tell a brand new graduate, okay, figure it out on your own. Some will do it. Some will do it amazingly. Some won't. And so what we've designed here is something that is designed to be turnkey, so that when those volunteers say, hey, what's an example of how I can make this work? So here's one. Adjust it, customize it to your needs, and hopefully it works for you. It's essentially 10 years of best practices, 10 plus years of best practices we've learned from being CERT coordinators, CERT volunteers, doing drills, participating in drills, seeing other training, taking additional classes. It expands upon the basic CERT training. And that should be one of your goals, is this is not the finish line. I graduated, I have my certificate that says I've been trained in the community emergency response team. That's not done. That's the beginning. The next steps are the important part. If you want your community to be able to stand up after a disaster and save lives until the professionals can arrive, CERT Basic is the starting point You need to grow it. You need to take additional training. You need to learn more and see how you can make that work for your community. And on that point, we do like to say this is a whole community system. This isn't just the graduates of the CERT program. This is the untrained people. It's the houses of worship, the businesses. The entire community should be part of the solution. What we try and do is say this is a turnkey system. We're going to give you working examples, step-by-step guides, so that you can implement it in your area without having to make the adjustments. On the other hand, it should be customized. What my community looks like is going to be dramatically different than yours. If you're in DC, you're in Florida, you're in Washington State, you're going to have different challenges. You're going to have different environmental factors. You might get a lot more rain than we do. You might get hurricanes. You might get these things called tornadoes that scare the crap out of me. I do not want to, on our way over here, we did a layover in Chicago, and the men's room said it was a extreme weather shelter. I don't want to live in a place that has extreme weather shelters. But at the same time, I live in California, there's always the threat of the big one, the big earthquake, the San Andreas fault. We've seen movies that were ridiculous about it. We don't know how bad that earthquake's going to be. We don't know when that earthquake's going to be. All we know is it may happen sometime in the next 20 plus years. So what we do to prepare for an earthquake is going to be different than how you prepare for a tornado or a hurricane. How you're going to implement your plan to respond to the disaster is going to be different than ours. But what we're trying to do is give you some baseline stuff that says, here's a starting point that will help you figure it out. And one of the big things we do is we're trying to find team leaders. We want to build teams around team leaders. And CERT is a great starting point because if you didn't realize it, CERT's teaching you how to be a team leader. The CERT basic class actually does that. They teach you the components. They teach you the fundamentals, how to keep people safe. And that's a great starting place for finding team leaders. Not everyone is going to want to step up and be a team leader, but you should ask the question, hey, do you want to do the next step? Do you want to build a team in your community? Don't tell them you're going to make them a team leader. Just lead them on a little bit. Hey, we're going to help you build that team. They'll find out in a little bit that they're the team leader and you're building the team around them, but you want to get those team leaders so you can get these teams built. NTP isn't an optional add-on. We're not saying you need to do this. We're not telling any of our people in Los Angeles they need to do it. It's something that they can do. It's an option. We built it so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we heard that several times this morning about reinventing the wheel. So this is our goal, to not have to let other people reinvent the wheel every time they want to start something. The step-by-step guides should work out of the box, but should be customized to your needs and your scenarios. And we're providing easy to implement drills. We've been trying to do monthly drills over the last last 3 years. That is a monumental task. For anyone who's done a drill design or an exercise, it usually takes months of planning. We've templated it so all you need are people to be facilitators and forms and some basic equipment that we provide. That way, we don't have to think about it. Okay, give me the location, time, and the next drill. We'll be there and we'll have it running. One of the big things is we want to separate, not really separate, we want to make it so that volunteers can build their teams and do it on their own. We provide support and guidance, but they really need to be the ones who are stepping up and saying, I want to build this team. Can you help? And then we want to emphasize that We're going to be there to hold your, not necessarily hold your hand, but guide you along the way. A lot of times we see teams stand up, they get this inspiration, they want to do it. They're given a bunch of information, they're given a deluge of information, and then they're left on their own. We don't think that's a good idea. We want to be there to guide you from the start and on an ongoing basis. As we said earlier, that CERT is a basic skill toolkit. Leaves the next steps up to the volunteers and forces you to sometimes recreate the wheel. What NTP is, Neighborhood Team Program is a fill in the gap for this. We're looking, as I said, I'm an engineer. I'm looking at a problem. How do I develop a system that addresses and fixes the problem? So we built the guides, the templates. We wrote standard operating guides. A lot of it mirrored off the fire department because this is what they do. They've had a lot of experience doing this. Why should we recreate the wheel when they're giving us the templates in their own standard operating guides? What we did in addition to that is realize that CERT is good up here, but it doesn't really address the neighborhoods down here. So we brought in Map Your Neighborhood. It's created, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's a great starting point for a lot of the communities and neighborhoods. And then we've also brought in Neighborhood Watch because why not? Why shouldn't they be disaster trained? Why shouldn't they be part of the solution? What we really want to do is build resilience, and we want to have these programs, these teams survive indefinitely. A lot of the firefighters, a lot of the program managers are career employees. They have a career track. They're not going to be here forever. I think it's pretty rare you're going to find a CERT program manager who's been in that position for 20 years. But sometimes what we see, I've had 4 different captains since I've been a coordinator. Every time a new captain comes in, the program changes. It resets. It's now that new captain's guidance and their plan. But if you have a program that works, a team that works, and they come in and say, okay, what do you have? Say, well, this is what we have. This works. I suspect a lot of those people who come in the program manager position are not going to say, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do it my way. Might happen. Hopefully it doesn't. But if you have something that works and can demonstrate to them, then it's going to make their job a lot easier because they're taking on this new role, this new position, and they might not even be CERT trained. And you're saying, hey, this is what works. This is how we're doing it. Yeah, covered that part. A lot of the community members in our area have been there for decades versus the program managers, probably 2 to 4 years. Does that sound about right for your programs? 2 to 4 years, and then a new program manager comes in? Everyone's staring blankly. Does anybody have a program manager who's been there for more than 10 years? A couple of you. Cool.
Our last program manager was there for 8.
8? Okay.
I've taken it over now.
Great.
13 here in Enterprise, Alabama.
I heard someone on Zoom saying 13 years. That's pretty cool. That's great. And that really gives that program manager time to really build that program. But do they live in the community? Maybe. If we give ownership to the volunteers, the people who actually live in that community, then you're working with that program manager and you have 8, 10, 13, maybe even 20 years if that person is going to be in that position to build this and make it grow. And then when they leave, the community can carry it on to the next program manager. I want to emphasize that point. If you have a program that works and Your program manager becomes a new program manager. Meet with them, show them what you're doing. We're building this from the ground up. CERT is kind of top down. You have the program manager, government agencies, and then they build down. What we're looking at is what's the lowest level that we can start at, and that's the neighborhood block. And this is why we're incorporating Map Your Neighborhood into this, is 10 to 25 homes, about 10 to 100 residents per block. A neighborhood is made up of multiple household blocks. So you're looking maybe 200 to 40,000 residents, depending on how big your city is or town is. Smaller cities, of course, towns, a lot fewer, especially if they're spread out. Communities are made up of multiple neighborhoods, 40 to 80,000 residents, and then cities are built, made up of multiple communities. 4 million in the city of Los Angeles. But we heard this earlier, neighbor helping neighbor. It starts with neighbor talking to neighbor. In LA City, it's very rare that we know our neighbors anymore. A lot of us will drive into our garages, hit the garage door opener, and close the door behind us so we don't have to see our neighbors or talk to them. But resiliency is built upon neighbor knowing neighbor. And so you want to build a team, your neighbors have to talk to each other. They need to go and meet their neighbors, get to know them, find out who they can trust, who they can build the team with. Working with your government agency gives that team legitimacy and support. If you have a program manager who is encouraging you and supporting you, it's the best thing in the world. If you have a program where your program manager is an absentee, or there hasn't been a CERT program manager in a while, you're doing it all on your own. And that's a monumental task. So definitely work with your government agencies. This is, again, not a replacement, not a competition. This is just how do we, at the volunteer level, build something that's going to last? And then work with our government agencies, work with our program managers to get the support to really make this flourish. And then when you have a new program manager, you can come in and say, hey, this is what we've been doing. Let's teach you what the program is about. We've developed, like I said, a set of documents. We have a website, documents.ntp-la.org, and you'll find these documents up there with step-by-step guides, help okay signs, some flyers that we use to hand out information, our standard operating guides. These are all on the website. We did hand out some of the guides, some of the handouts, the step-by-step guide, the 5 Ws, and the contents of the staging area kit, which we'll go over shortly. We also customize the forms. You have a quick question?
On the last slide, you mentioned all the forms to be able electronically to financially support. If there's somebody comes to you and says, listen, I have 80 houses, you provide them all these forms, they start in the box or something?
At the moment, no, because we're not a CERT program. We're not able to do that. We don't get grant money for that kind of thing. We will work with you and share with the way we've raised money to do certain things. But this is where you're going to work with your program manager and say, hey, how can we do this? And there's several classes here about how to raise money at that level. But if you have a 501c3, you can get grants. You can raise money that way. Yeah.
Just had a question. Part of it was just to make sure
Yeah, documents.ntp-la.org. That's where you're going to find these.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Policies, you have policies,
Ooh, that's a tricky question. Policies are going to be mostly from your government agency because they're the ones that need to protect themselves. And that's the honest truth, is that volunteers are great, but volunteers can be liabilities as well. And so the policies are to protect not only the city from getting sued, but also protect volunteers from volunteers. That's the scariest thing is you have someone who's taken this training, they sound like they're a good person. You don't know this person. And they come in and they learn all the secrets that you have about your neighborhood, and then they turn out to be some person you don't want in your program. And then how do you get rid of them without them suing you or suing the city or suing someone else? It is a very scary possibility. I don't know if it's a real thing. I'm guessing at some point, someone has always tried to exploit something. So talk to your government agency about policies.
So how do you do that within the org chart though? If you have CERT and non-CERT and just talk about the whole thing. So
Well-
when they're looking at your volunteer pool, looking at volunteers,
Didn't you learn in CERT how to lead non-trained volunteers?
yes,
It's exactly.
but your NTP though, you're including that pool. That pool.
Yeah. Because that's what the CERT training teaches you. If you have one CERT person and two non-CERT trained people, you know how to keep them safe. You know how to lead them. So why wouldn't we include that portion of it?
Yes, it's just so there's a difference of personalities.
Absolutely. But we don't say, oh, you're not CERT trained, you can't attend this drill. You're not CERT trained, you can't help. When the earthquake happens or the tornado happens, you're going to take everyone who says, I want to help, right? So, I've seen a lot of forms that have been completely redone from scratch. Hold the questions, I'll get to questions later. That leads to very confusing issues because you attend one drill and they have forms that they built from scratch. And then you attend another drill and they have completely different forms that they built from scratch. FEMA gives us the forms. Some of them are decent, but our Valley Bureau coordinator put it a good way. They were designed to be generic. They were designed to be so generic that they don't work. So you have to customize them. I said earlier, CERT must be customized for your neighborhood. So we customized some of the forms. I'll show you pictures of what we've done, but the purpose is when you look at the form, it should look like the form you saw in the CERT training, just with a few tweaks here and there to make it work better. Personnel resources. This is actually an older CERT form. You know, the new one says, what do you want to do? You want to do fire suppression? You want to do medical? You want to do search and rescue? You come to my staging area, I don't care what you want to do. I want to know what you're good at. I'm going to trust you to rate yourself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a scribe to intake you. I don't want you filling this out. They're going to interview you. They're going to ask you questions on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being you just heard about it now, and 5 being you could teach it. How good are you at radio communication? How good are you at medical? We put a cheat sheet here. If you're an EMT or greater, 5. If you're an EMR, 4. Your current first aid CPR trained, 3. If you have an expired first aid CPR card, 2. Only CERT trained basic, 1. And then no medical training, you're not even CERT graduate, 0. Be careful about this. Egos, especially on your members who are been doing this for a long time. They will come and they will say 5 across the board. That's a red flag. I'm not going to say that they aren't 5 across the board. I teach this stuff. I'm not putting 5 across the board. I'm being realistic about myself. So if you're the scribe who's intaking, you're interviewing, you're getting a feel for this person. Worst thing that can happen is in a real disaster, you put someone who thinks they know everything out in the field leading a team, that's a disaster waiting to happen. So get to know your people and hopefully help them to have a better realistic understanding about their capabilities and their limitations. And train them. Hey, our people don't have radio communication skills. They got on the radio and it's just a giant dumpster fire. Well, let's do some radio drills. Let's do some training on this. Hey, all of our people don't have first aid training yet. Let's get a first aid class going. Other special skills, I mean, you can see the example. If someone says they're a singer-songwriter, is that something you need to write down? It needs to be relevant to what we're doing, right? Somebody says they have a chainsaw, cool. We may need a chainsaw, but what does the CERT training say? The person who owns the chainsaw is the one allowed to use it. All right, we need a chainsaw. Who's got the chainsaw? Michael Douglas does. Cool, let's get him to get his chainsaw and let's take care of business. Someone's a retired Army medic. They're 80. They retired from the Army 40 years ago. Do we trust their medical skills at this point? Maybe. Maybe they're just a badass. Maybe they've been doing this for the last 40 years, teaching first aid. They're a paramedic and they do all this kind of stuff that's crazy. I caution you there. Make sure that they stay within their scope of practice, because you don't want someone who has a bag full of medical supplies with scalpels and sutures and airway tubes getting a little out of control. We've adjusted the assignment tracking log a little bit too to make this a little more usable for our needs. We'll talk about how we form teams in a little bit, and we've adjusted it so it's a little bit easier to understand. Just checking the time. But this should look like a form you've seen before with slight modifications. So I mentioned the templates for the drills. We've been trying to run monthly drills for the last 3 years. I can tell you we have not been able to achieve that. But we're doing several drills. We'll have a gap, maybe a couple months gap, and then we'll do several more. I think we didn't have a drill in May, but we did one January, February, March. It was April we didn't have a drill. May we had a drill, June we had a drill, and we just had a drill in July. We use the same template. I'm not reinventing the wheel every drill. Just doing the same thing over and over again. And the repetition is good. But if you have good people running the drill, it's not the same drill every time. Every time it's different, but it follows the same template. And we can reproduce this everywhere we go. If we do a drill in coastal San Pedro and then we do a drill in the valley, it follows the same template. The same way we've done it every single time is the same format that's done every single time. And we have several templated drills. The damage assessment, incident response is 2 separate drills. Staging area operations is more of a tabletop inside a classroom. The in-building search and rescue is awesome. We've done this a few times now. The last time we were actually able to kill the lights in the room that they were searching. They didn't know that. We did not tell them that they needed to bring flashlights. You see a bunch of people pulling out their phones, and in pitch black, it turns out the flashlight on your phone goes about maybe 3 feet, I think. Bring the lights back up. Or did is this the, I'm taking too long and I need to cut it short indication? Is there a timer or something? Is this, I mean, or is this place haunted? Because that's a little freaky. All right, there you go, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, actually, maybe we should leave the front lights off. But it was amazing because people knew this was an in-building search. These were people who were CERT trained. I think everyone at this drill was CERT trained. Very few of them had flashlights. But guarantee you next time they go to this drill, all right, I hope next time they go to this drill, they will have a real flashlight. Because if you pan the room with your cell phone, you can't see beyond 3 feet. This thing will blind all of you. That's the other thing we learned from the drill, especially when we made some of our responders victims for a couple of the rounds. They learned the hard way that if your flashlight is 1,000 lumen white and you're assessing someone and shining that light into their eyes, it is not a good experience. So tell your people, get flashlights with a red light, get headlamps with a red light. Because if they're working with a patient, survivor, you don't want to be blinding them with that white light, because that person now loses their night vision, especially if it's dark in the room. And each other. You're hitting each other with the flashlights too. A medical triage. This is where we set up several scenarios, and you go through and we try and do maybe 6 to 8 scenarios, and it's just triage. You approach the scenario, someone tells you what happened, and you get to work. Triage. Should be done in 10 minutes, and then you move on to the next scenario, and the next scenario, and the next scenario. Repeat this over and over again. The first time they run through is going to be bad. It always is. Second time they run through, gets a little bit better. By the time they get to the 6th, 7th, 8th round, they've got it because of that repetition over and over again. And we have our facilitators that do a hot wash at the end of each round, saying, all right, what went right? What went wrong? This is what we saw. And that immediate feedback helps them become better. So when they get to the 6th, 7th, 8th time they're doing this triage, they know what they're doing. And finally, medical treatment at the tarp, where it's the next set. We have the medical tarps laid out and a bunch of survivors on it. All right, your team shows up. What are you going to do? Get to work. And that allows you to really isolate that one skill, focus on that one skill, get that skill right. The big exercises, the big refreshers are great, but these drills help them get to the point where they can go to that big exercise, that big refresher, and already have those skills down. As I mentioned, we have additional components to the neighborhood team program in addition to CERT. CERT being where this really grew from. But we added on Map Your Neighborhood, we added on Neighborhood Watch. Obviously, I'm from the city of Los Angeles. I take pride in saying that we created the CERT program in 1986. It wasn't me, the fire department did it. But this has grown. FEMA took it over, and now it's worldwide. It's amazing. And you all know this. CERT training teaches community responders how to safely lead untrained members. CERT members lead teams, and that's the important part of the neighborhood team program. And that's why on the sign-in sheet here, did anybody notice this column? We added this column here because non-CERT trained members come to our drills. Great. We accidentally put an entire team, almost put an entire team of non-CERT trained members out into the field. That would have been a disaster. It got caught. So we added the column, we customized the form. Say, are you CERT trained, yes or no? Unfortunately, every single time, the scribe just does a check mark. Who here does not know what Map Your Neighborhood is? Okay, a couple of you. It was created for the state of Washington to really help organize at a block level. State of Washington is moving away from it, but last time I looked at their website a couple of days ago, it still said, keep checking back, we'll have more information about our replacement program. Red Cross does administer Map Your Neighborhood. Some other programs might have taken it on as well. But what's great is it's a 2-hour, probably an hour and a half orientation. The videos are all on YouTube. All you have to do is just hit play and it feeds you the information through the videos. Designate a gathering site in your neighborhood block. Gives you 9 steps that you do. Turn off your gas, turn off your water. Obviously check on your family. Put a fire extinguisher out on your curb. My neighborhood, and I'm not doing that, but maybe hide it behind something so that the other team members know that's where it's gonna be. Because if you're not at your home and there's a fire at your home, you want your neighbors to put it out for you, right? Or at least if it's a small fire, put it out before it becomes a big fire. And they're gonna use your fire extinguisher to do that. Or if they need a fire extinguisher, they know, hey, these homes have the fire extinguishers out there for us to use if we need them. What's also great about this is done at the local level. Even when it's facilitated by a government agency, that information doesn't go to the government agency. It stays within the neighborhood, within the members who were at that meeting to learn this stuff. They share information about their neighbors, about themselves. Hey, I'm a EMT or I'm a doctor. I've got latchkey kids who are home for several hours before I get home. I have an elderly parent who's on oxygen and a CPAP machine, or is mobility challenged, and they're on the 3rd floor, and they need an elevator that has power, or a stair chair that needs power to get out of the building. These are going to be the people that we want to check in on after the earthquake. Oh yeah, it's 3:35 when the earthquake strikes. Kids are probably home, but the parents aren't. So the kids know me because we've talked to our neighbors. We know each other. I'm gonna go check on them, make sure they're okay. Especially if they've never been in an earthquake before. Probably the scariest thing in the world. Parents aren't home, you're a young child, and the earth's just started moving. Probably terrifying. What we encourage is that you do the 9 steps. First golden hour, that's what it's built for. And then you reassess. Hey, was this something minor? We checked on everybody, everyone's fine? Or, yeah, we have multiple injuries. We have damage to buildings. We need to take this to the next level. We need to activate our CERT staging area. All the CERT members need to come because we need to go check door to door and see who needs help.
Sounds like sort of a takeoff of organizing a block association almost. And, you know, but now instead of this, you know, engaging in just all the fun activities, which usually what block associations do, is you're actually teaching them preparatory skills.
Absolutely. Why shouldn't the block association take this kind of training?
Right.
I don't have too much on the slide. Neighborhood watch seems to be more hit and miss. Some areas have a lot of neighborhood watch, some don't. But check in, if you have a neighborhood watch team and they use radios to communicate, see if they're interested in getting disaster trained. Let them be part of all the solutions, not just the ones that they're interested in playing around with. As I said, the drills that we run, they're CERT drills. 99% of the participants are CERT trained. We do get 1 or 2 people who've heard about it. It's great when they come because now they're going, oh, I need to take the CERT training. Great marketing. What we've done is we took the step-by-step guide and really templated it. This is a little controversial. Obviously, CERT basic training teaches the ICS system. Teaches, well, used to teach about incident commander. Now that term's been removed. CERT team leader, operations, logistics, how you normally see the ICS chart. But for most people who don't deal with us on a daily basis, it is a lot. It's great when you integrate under the ICS command, you report to the fire department and they've got the chart up and this is, you understand how this all works. But at the block level, we see people overemphasizing it. We broke them down into 4 roles. And these roles can get slotted into any ICS chart. But I think it makes more sense for certain volunteers who are not deep into the ICS system. Team leader, radio communicator, scribe. Everyone else is a hands-on responder. We also, I've I heard a battalion chief say, 2 people is not a team. We know that's the smallest number, the buddy system. 3 people is your smallest team. And the reason is they have a team leader. The team leader's job is to make sure everybody makes it home safe. They're not a boss, but they're a guide. They're a coach. They want the team to succeed. That leader portion of it is important because you want if your team succeeds, you succeed as the team leader. It's all about the entire team. So that team leader makes it a team, and their primary job is to make sure everybody makes it home safe. Radio communicator, scribe, I think those are self-explanatory terms. When we set up the staging area and we set up damage assessment teams, we set up incident response teams, we standardize the numbers here. Your basic team is a team leader, a radio operator, and a scribe. Doesn't matter if they're at staging or in the field. That's the core. Damage assessment team leader, radio operator, scribe. They go out, they radio back, hey, I found this tree that collapsed on top of a car. Or hey, I see smoke. Or hey, I found someone who's injured. Incident response team, on the other hand, they have a little bit more people. They have that core, team leader, radio operator, scribe, but now they have hands-on responder pairs. You have a team of 5, a team of 7 that can actually do some work out there. I mentioned facilitators. The drills that have props and moulaged victims, those are amazing. I can tell you from experience, those are a lot of work to get off the ground, a lot of planning, a lot of wrangling resources, going to places. Hey, do you have students who are interested in community service that can be moulaged victims? Amazing when you pull that off. It's so much work. On the other hand, if you have facilitators who are experienced CERT members in your cadre, they can storytell. Some can storytell better than others, but I feel like it's a good balance because you don't need the infrastructure and you don't tell them. I hate the signs. You find a sign that says, or you have a victim that has a card around their neck and it says 31 breaths a minute, capillary refill 2, can answer questions. And you see the CERT member go, mark them red. Is that realistic? But you have a facilitator who says, okay, over in that corner over there, you see someone laying on the ground, their head slumped over like this. Their eyes are closed. What are you gonna do? You make your team step through it. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna go check on them. Sir, are you okay? Take this to the CPR training. First aid CPR, you have a mannequin that's on the ground. You know you're in a CPR class. You know you're gonna be doing CPR on this dummy. In real life, you don't know. But people will jump to conclusions in training. It's called training syndrome. And so the facilitators are there to slow the pace, make the people go step by step through it. And then you can change the scenario, okay? They're starting to, they look up at you, oh yeah, I was just taking a nap and what just happened? And play with them, especially if you get some cocky volunteers that think they know everything. Ooh, those are fun. But when you work with your volunteers, it's important to also realize that they're there to learn and you have to be a good teacher. Punishing someone for making a mistake in training should not, you need to be very cautious. You don't want to discourage the volunteer. Yes, they need to learn this lesson, but you don't want to scare them away. You don't want to be punitive and damage that volunteer who came on their own free time to be part of this training. It's a balance, but it can be fun. If anybody played Dungeons and Dragons, you're basically a dungeon master. You're coming up with a story, you're sharing the story and leading them down this journey. Additionally, when you notice your team is out of their depth. They haven't done triage since they took the CERT training 2 years ago, and they don't remember how to get started. You give them hints. If they're still not getting it, you can say, okay, hold on. Let's go over triage again from the beginning. 32 can do. The remedial training, immediately right there when you see your team is clearly out of their depth. And then you move on to the next scenario. And hopefully now they're getting it. You can adjust the scenario, like I said. If you have a good team, they're strong, they're on top of it, you can make the scenario harder. You can give them some really fun stuff to do. It should be realistic. That throws me off drills real fast when this seems fake. There's nothing here that I expect to ever see in real life. But if I'm getting scenarios where I can imagine this is real life, those drills are so much better for me. That hot wash is important at the end. Give them the immediate feedback of how they did. Even in between, as you're going from one location to another, talk about it. That helps them get the next scenario right, especially if they struggled on this last one. And at the end, come back and say, okay, what did you guys learn? I like to say that if you go to a drill and you didn't learn anything, there's two possibilities. One, you know everything and should be teaching. Or two, the drill was not good enough. We have drills that are too simple and it's a cakewalk. That doesn't challenge them. They don't learn. Make them struggle a little bit. Make them think through it. That way they can grow, become a better responder. We talked about staging area kits. We have 10 plus staging area kits deployed throughout the city of Los Angeles right now. And our 501c3 has made MOUs with property owners. We've worked with their neighborhood councils to fund them. What we want to do is drop a box that is relatively inexpensive and has everything the team needs to get started. Dry erase board, magnetic, maps of the area, clipboards. We like the legal size ones because you can fit larger maps on them. Two-way radios. We've had drills where people bring their FRS radios. Some people bring $5 FRS radios. Some people bring $50 FRS radios. Guess which ones don't work very well? Sometimes. Sometimes you have an amazing $5 radio, but you don't know. You have completely divergent equipment out there, and that leads to comms nightmares. So every kit has 10 radios in it that are labeled with the position that it's getting assigned to. And that way, you issue out the radios and you train, you drill, you know the capabilities of these radios. Everyone knows how to use these radios. They have a standard, a templated system that they can rely on instead of bringing their own equipment. Yes, they should still bring their FRS radios, but we're going to give you something that we know is going to work in the area. I think I skipped ahead. So this is talking about the format of the staging area. Every drill we do has a staging area. That's the command and control. The staging manager with the big picture. They're tracking the teams, and this is critical. We've had several drills where comms have failed on the outer edges of the drill area. And we don't know what happened to the team. Now, eventually the team makes it back, or we call them on a cell phone and get them to come back. But imagine this is your team after a tornado has ravaged your area, and you're sending people out into the blind. No idea what's going on out there. And now you lost contact with your team. So tracking your teams in the field is critical. You want to make sure you know where they are, or more importantly, where they last were when they reported in. Because if you need to send a search team for your team, whoever you've not heard back from in 30 minutes, where do you begin to look for them? Good documentation. I always put a strong scribe at the staging area, because when you have to go back and say, hey, what happened 30 minutes ago? What was called in? you're gonna be looking at the comms logs and say, okay, all right, yeah, Alpha team was at this location, they called in at this time. So if we look at a predefined route that they're supposed to be taking, we can kind of figure out where they might be or where they should be. But look into the comms logs. Let me put it a different way. If you don't have a good scribe, it's a nightmare. Trying to go back to your records when you don't have a good scribe, that is the first thing I would do. Our Valley Bureau coordinator also made a good point. I have really bad handwriting. You don't want me as your scribe. But a lot of people think that the scribe position is not an important role. They think it's kind of like a secretary, or it's something that less capable people should do. I consider the scribe the most important position, especially at the staging area. Having that strong scribe is going to make a world of difference. And that scribe is effectively the deputy. They know everything. They wrote it down. If something happens to you, you're the staging area leader. You need to go to the restroom. You get a call from your significant other that there's been an injury at home. You're out of there. Guess who's taking over? The deputy, that scribe, because they know everything. So when you hear from your people and say, I don't want to be the scribe, it's a menial task. No, it is one of the most important tasks. And you're next in line to be in command. Give them that carrot. In addition to tracking the teams, you're prioritizing the incidents. What is the most important incident that they go deal with next? Is it on the other side of the map? Is it going to take them 30 minutes to walk there? Can they go to something closer? Can they go to a less important incident on the way, take care of that one first and something quick, and then get to the more important incident? Or do we have a team that is hopefully wrapping up soon, but maybe a little bit longer, but they're closer to that next incident that we need to send them? That is what the staging area is thinking, what they're having to focus on. How do I prioritize resource management? How do I make the best use of my resources, my teams in the field, to help as many people do the greatest good for the greatest number in the shortest amount of time? What resources? We always throw this out there. We have someone who is an immediate. They need to go to the hospital or they're going to die. What resources do we have? Well, they usually say, oh, can we call the fire department? Well, if cell phones are down, landlines are down, how are you going to get a hold of the fire department? Do you have a way to do that? If it's a yes, cool. But sometimes you have to be creative. Encourage your teams to think outside the box. Hey, the neighbor's home, the neighbor has a car. Can they transport this person to the hospital if we don't have a way to get the fire department there first? Damage assessment teams, we focus on 3. For some reason, in several drills, like, oh, there's an extra person, we'll just throw them onto that team, 4-person team now. You know what you can do with a 4-person team? Split them into pairs. And that is something we don't want to have happen, because now you don't have a team out there, you have 2 buddy pairs that are doing different things and no one's leading them. So that's why we're going with an odd number. It's very intentional. Can't split 3 people very easily. The team out there, damage assessment team, they assess, report, triage, stabilize, and most importantly, move on. Fire department methodology, windshield assessment. They are supposed to drive by a burning building because they don't know what's worse beyond that. They stopped at the burning building, try to put the fire out, they might miss something worse on the other end. So that's why we follow the same method. The damage assessment team should be quick. They should be able to assess the area, report back incidents within an hour, and then come back and now get reallocated to an incident response team. So it's important not to get sucked in. During our drills, we throw curveballs at them. We want to make them get sucked into the incident so they can learn the lesson. Don't do that. When they report an incident, It's important questions to ask. Is this something we can do something about? Or do we need to escalate this to the professionals? Is this going to get worse if we don't deal with it? And again, the creative solutions. Can we make this someone else's responsibility? Hey, there's a neighbor here. Maybe they can look after this person who tripped, fell, and broke their ankle. We name our teams NATO alphabet, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. And there's no more than 4 damage assessment teams, but there can be less. But Alpha, Charlie, Bravo, and Delta are always the damage assessment teams. You may not have a Delta team. That's perfectly fine. Because when you get a call, it's chaos out there. You get a call from Delta. Is Delta a damage assessment team or they're an incident response team? Well, if you know Delta is always a damage assessment team, they're a damage assessment team. But if you have 3 damage assessment teams and Delta is your first incident response team, we're trying to make this turnkey, trying to make this simple, standardize on certain operating procedures. And that's one of them that always trips our people up. The incident response teams, they can do some more good. Do the damage assessment first, then go out there. But that stabilize part is important here. They need to stabilize. You're not going to come across someone who's spurting red blood out of their thigh and go, okay, we're reporting it. Someone's going to help you. Bye. Throw a tourniquet on it. Do something. Stabilize it. Have another neighbor look at them. See, is this something that your neighbor can help out with? Incident response teams, their goal is to bring an incident to conclusion. Sometimes they can. Sometimes the incident needs to stay open. You need more resources later. It needs to be escalated to the fire department. Okay? Incident stays open until the fire department takes care of it. Their Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, and Hotel. You're probably not going to have more than 4 incident response teams. If you do, that's awesome. Oh, and then that incident response team gets briefed over the radio. This is where your radio skills come in handy. We're sending you to an incident. Here's all the information you got. You got to get it over the radio because you're not coming back to staging to get that in person. I've used the same list of incidents for the last 3 years. No need to recreate the wheel. These are the possible incidents. Every single time, every single facilitator is going to run one of these incidents differently. It will never be the same. Don't reinvent the wheel. We are almost out of time. So I apologize. I usually do a 2-hour training. So this obviously ran a little bit long. So I want to get to your questions now before we run out of time. I'll make these PowerPoint slides available to you. I have business cards here. If you have questions, you got the step-by-step guides that also has my contact information on it as well. Question?
How long does it usually take from inception to having an active team? How long?
So when I said you find a team leader and build the team around them, it is wholly dependent upon that person's ability to recruit. Help them. But if you're in a challenged area, nobody wants to do this. It's like pulling blood out of a stone.
But generally,
I can't give you that. Some areas have been, we have 50 people ready to go. Cool. Others are like, yeah, I don't even talk to my neighbors and they don't like me. That's maybe not the best team leader. So unfortunately, I can't give you a good answer. Yes.
so you said you have these kids you drop off. Who's responsible for maintaining them?
Our 501c3 owns them. The reason for that is that in the city of Los Angeles, there have been disaster bins purchased by neighborhood councils, by other groups out there that have long been abandoned. Nobody knows anything about them. Nobody knows who's in charge of them. Could be the people who are in charge of them are no longer in the city of Los Angeles. So our 501c3 maintains it. If you have a 501c3 that can own property, then I recommend that. Because then your 501c3 ensures the longevity, continuation, continuity. And also then make your team leaders maintain those bins. Other questions? Yes. Yes. I do not have an answer for that.
That's okay, 'cause I already the same problem.
Yeah.
Especially the CERT.
Now, my hope is that the large apartment buildings are going to get more attention from the fire department than single family homes. I honestly, I haven't even thought about the apartment buildings. Those are our very unique challenges. Where do we store stuff? You want 14 days of water in a small studio apartment? That's not gonna. I encourage talk to landlords. There's been some attempts in the city of Los Angeles to kind of force landlords to have places that they can store supplies for their residents, but it's outside the scope of this. Other questions? Yes. Sorry, what's the question? Monthly drills. Get them out. Let them do something. Give them opportunities to practice their skills. Give them opportunities to feel like that they're learning something. Give them training opportunities. Bring in subject matter experts to teach them new skills. That's my recommendation. That's what we've been doing.
You mentioned earlier that, say, you guide
So a lot of times they say, oh, I have this perfect staging area. It's at the school. School's going to lockdown. Can't get to the staging area kid if there's students on property. Fire stations also tend to be bad locations because fire station goes in earthquake mode. They leave porters, they lock up, and then they're driving around the city, and then they may go to a staging area of their own, and there's no one at the fire station to let you in access that staging area. It's the lessons learned that when someone comes up with an idea that we've already seen as a bad idea, we can recommend against it and give them the reasons why.
kind of like you try this out or else something better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. We have one house of worship that it is gated. We put a combination lock on another lock for one of the fences. So we now have access through that combination lock to get in. But that is a challenge. That is, again, one of the requirements, 24/7 access to the property. And that's what you have to work out with your MOU. How is that going to be achieved? If they say no, absolutely not. Or maybe they have 24/7 staff there. All right, cool. We have a few staging areas that have 24/7 security. That's great. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming. I hope you learned a lot. If you want to contact me, my business cards are up here. Feel free to reach out to me. I can send you the slide deck and also help you with any questions you have after that. Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
You should have a little late for what we some of these ones. I'm gonna get rid of this. I know, every time I come into this video, I learn something. 100%.